All right, so I'm happy now to introduce our speaker for today. We have Melinda Garvey, who's here to show us how to focus on solving real problems, not just perceived ones, how to build meaningful connections that last beyond the transaction, and how sharing our networks creates a flywheel effect that continuously fuels our sales funnel. Melinda is a serial entrepreneur, founding her first company, Austin Woman Magazine, 23 years ago. She is also the founder of On the Dot and In Her Circle. She also serves as the facilitator for our Austin cohort of the CWE's Accelerator Program and an advisor with the Center for Women Entrepreneurs. So, everybody, please welcome Melinda.
Hello, everyone. I'm going to share my screen here. Maybe I'm the low tech girl trying to figure this out. So let's see if we can get this do this thing here as we. How's that? Did it do it?
You got it.
Okay, excellent. Good. Well, welcome everyone. First of all, I just want to say I'm so impressed that there are so many people up this early, especially after the time change. I don't know, when I was sitting in my office, I'm like, it's dark up here. Like, what is happening? Anyway, but thank you all for being here. I really, really appreciate it. I wish I could actually I wish we could all be in person. I love interactive in person. So I'm going to try to make this a little bit interactive and maybe, see some show of hands and some, some things because I would, just really so much of this is about you and your experiences. You all as a collective know far, far more than I could ever tell you. And really, what I want to do today, and what I spend a lot of my time doing, is just really encouraging women to step into their power and to make sure that you all feel comfortable. We all have this, imposter syndrome where we feel like, and especially when it comes to sales, right? And it's funny, I always laugh. People ask me to talk about sales all the time. I hate sales. Like I am that person, right? Who from the beginning, I'm kind of like, oh my gosh, I don't want to be a salesperson. So how many of you feel that way? Just like that's like you when you hear sales, you just get like cringy. Like, is that sure. Wave some hand. Okay, here we go. I got a few wave hand. Thanks. And I know it can seem really daunting as well because sales is all about putting yourself out there. So much of that first step into sales is about just how you show up and it's vulnerable, right? Especially, I mean, gosh, yeah, I know so many of you, most of you in here have not only one company, but multiple companies. So you're constantly, you know, um, out there and putting yourself out there. And I know that can be really tough. So hopefully today, I'll just give you some suggestions, but I would also love your feedback and your ideas and things that you've done because I think you guys sharing those is absolutely just as important. So I want to just start off by telling you a little bit of a story of how I got into sales. Or, that how I actually, stumbled in here. And I was in a job. This is when I lived in Washington, D.C. I had been working at an advertising agency, and I then I went to work for a group of daily suburban newspapers, and I was in marketing. And in that time, marketing and sales were two totally separate things. And, I, prided myself on, making sure that, I could, hold on, I'm going to try to, I like lost, I can't see anybody there, which is so super weird. Oh, I don't want to go to the next slide. Okay. Well, I don't know. It's strange on these slides. So sorry about that. But I was in this role. I was, head of marketing. And my boss said to me when I went in to talk to him about a raise or promotion, I said, I really, been here a while. I really want to get this raise. I want to move ahead in the company, et cetera, et cetera. And he said, okay, yes, I think you're ready for that, but here's what you're going to do. You're going to go over and you're going to run sales for this division of our company. And I'm like, what? I'm not going to run sales. What are you talking about? I'm a marketing person, and that was a much higher rank, right? When you're in marketing, you're sort of that activity. He's like, no, no, no. Here's the thing. He said, if you want to move ahead in the company, you've got to be able to sell. He's like, I promise you, this will be the best thing that I ever do for you. You learning how to put yourself out there, learning how to problem solve and work with clients and help them solve their problems. He's like, that's that's where the real money is, right? That's where, if you're going to ever build a company or do anything, you got to have sales, right? That at the crux of everything, it's your sales. So, of course, I did it kicking and screaming and, didn't really want to associate because, you had really at that time, I mean, this was in the early 90s, and it was all guys in the sales department. It didn't, it certainly wasn't a very female forward, role. So anyway, that was a little bit uncomfortable for me, but I learned so much because what I realized is I actually didn't have to do anything different than what I was already doing as a marketing person. Oftentimes, I would go with the sales team as the marketing person and to help generate ideas and get clients excited about things or just try to, help solve problems. And I realized when I was out there, I was really doing the same thing. And it was kind of this aha moment for me that being able now to take what I was doing, take this problem solving, take, my ability to ask people questions and really dig in and understand what was going on with them, and actually then tie that to numbers, right? To sales numbers and having to meet those numbers. It closed the circle for me and made me really understand, this is how the world went around. But what again, the thing that I realized is I didn't have to do anything different. I didn't have to feel like I was faking it. I could do the very same thing that I was doing. And I think that just normalizing that and having you all sort of understand that, is just that first thing, just to take away that fear. So, I like to tell founders, especially, just about reframing sales. So it's not, we always think about that more traditional. And if any of you have ever done sales training, I don't know if anybody out there has done that. I've been to several of them. And I usually leave with a nugget or two, but I generally, some of those, old school traditional sales trainings were really like bizarre, um, but I always leave with a nugget or two. But what I realize is that as a founder, especially, you're selling all the time, right? I mean, first of all, just you're selling your idea to yourself. I mean, when you first start a company, or when you're working on, I mean, how much doubt do we have? I mean, we're trying to think, gosh, is this even a good idea? So we're selling it to ourselves, to our significant other, to our family, our friends, just trying to sort of understand. I mean, that really is what it is, right? When you're really looking at what is that problem. I mean, we're trying to recruit people to help us, right? We're forming partnerships, pitching to investors. That's a whole other kind of, if any of y'all have ever done that, that's fun. We can talk about that another time. I've got a whole thing on that. But just really, just remembering, and I think just having that confidence that from the very germination of your idea and starting a business, you are selling. And so if you sort of debunk that, I think it just makes it makes it a lot easier to get your head around. So just some takeaways, I want for you today is just like reframing sales and really thinking about relationship building, because women are really, really good at that. Really figuring out how you can solve real problems rather than just perceived problems. And it's much easier to solve perceived problems. And sometimes we fall into it because even the customer doesn't know. And we're going to talk a little bit about that too. They don't know what their problem is. So that's your job to figure out what that is so you can solve them. So showing up with value beyond the sale. I mean, we've all been on the other end of sales, right? Where it's just like, oh my gosh, this person will not stop, and it's just completely transactional. Sometimes you gotta buy it anyway. You don't want to buy from them, but you have to buy it anyway, and then it's just completely transactional. But we've also probably experienced that relational sale, and that's what I really want to talk about. How you can bring value beyond that, and leveraging the power of sharing your network. Now, if you ever hear me talk anywhere, you will always hear me talk about sharing your network. So it doesn't matter what subject I am talking about, but I feel like this is the most powerful tool that we, especially as women, not only that we have, but that we need to use. So I'm going to talk a lot about leveraging that network and also just embracing it and being authentic. You don't have to be that cheesy salesperson, and feel like you're pressuring people. Okay. So, I mean, again, I don't need to go through all this stuff. I think you all know this, transactional versus relational. We've all experienced it. Certainly been on both ends of it. But really, I think how many times when someone is trying to sell you, are they actually finding out what your problem is and focusing on the real problem? uh, it's just so rare. So if you can learn to do that, if you can really learn to understand that, you will stand out immediately because we just don't take the time to do that. And I think especially now that everything is virtual and online and through email and through socials rather than that in-person one-on-one, we don't have that as much anymore. It takes real skill to continue that practice of really understanding your customer, understanding what they need, and focusing on solving a real problem. It takes a lot. So if you can do that, and you can continue to do that through just the way that we work now, I promise you, you will stand out above all. Long-term relationship building. I mean, some of my very closest friends today are people that I sold to at the beginning when I was launching Austin Woman, or even today, people who buy some of our major sponsorships are dear friends of mine. And they don't buy because I'm their friend. In fact, they'll often tell me no, and they feel comfortable doing that because they know we have this relationship and they know I understand their business. But they'll step up because we've built that. And it's really about those relationships. And I will say that in this day and age, and I know, look, I'm working hard on it because I've got an 18-year-old, but we have some generational shifts happening in how we relate to one another. And that those deeper long-term relationships and just are more rare. So as much as you can build those, you will again stand out immediately, just among the herd. Just again, understanding people's real needs. We can tell people a lot of things, and salespeople are notorious for telling you what you need, right? I mean, sometimes I'm like, I get all the robocalls, which I rarely answer, but sometimes you're waiting for a call and you're like, oh, I just fell into it. They start right in and they have no idea. They're asking me, they're like, we can close on this loan, no problem. I'm like, I don't need a loan. What are you talking about? So it's pretty rare again for people to listen for needs, but just really understanding what those needs are. And here's the thing, this is the fun part. I mean, sure. Are there some people out there that don't like building relationships? Yeah, but none of us. Like we're all founders, right? We're women. We love doing that. And if you look at it, like that's the fun part. You actually get to build relationships with people. You get to understand someone else. You get to help somebody else. It really, it's a very, if you can reframe it in a very positive light, you really are doing all of those things and just really seeing people as partners. They're not, even beyond just being a customer. I think sometimes when we put somebody in the customer barrel, then they have these parameters around them because they're a customer. And when you're really looking at partnership, I think you're thinking beyond. A lot of times I'll be out at an event somewhere that has nothing to do with me or Austin Woman, and somebody will say something, and I'll be like, "Oh my gosh, wait, you need to meet so and so," and they're a customer, right? They're just somebody like I know, but I know enough about their business because I've worked with them and I understand their problems, and I meet somebody that that can meet. So I think if you're looking at people as partners rather than just as customers, you're also sort of opening your mind when you're out and about anywhere you're going. You're thinking beyond, um, just that initial transaction with that person. So, as we talked about, we are natural relationship builders. I mean, you really have to in this day and age to be able to be a founder. Or you certainly have to have someone on your team that can do that just because we've got to, be able to attract people to our business. We have to be able to talk about our business and get people to be interested. So you all are already doing this, in so many ways. Okay, so let's talk about the customer. I mean, here's the real deal. They mostly don't know what they need. And that's not because they're stupid or they don't understand their business or any of those things. We all have a blind spot. I assure you that if I sat down with each of you and we're asking you questions about your business, there would be things that we would just unveil and you'd be like, oh my gosh. And we'd be digging and I asking you questions and digging to the root of it. And you would start learning things about your business and what your real needs are. We all have this blind spot. And trust me, if you all did that with me, I would be like, oh my God, I never thought of that. I mean, this is, and it's only because we are so focused sometimes on our own business, we can't see outside, and we have all kinds of issues. We have challenges. We get interrupted in the middle of, actually doing some thought work about our business, right? I mean, how many times are you right in the middle of a really good brainstorm and, something interrupts you in the middle? But that's what happens when we're founders, right? And that's what's happening to your customers as well. They're struggling too. They're struggling to figure out, they're working in their business, not on their business. I mean, the whole crux of the TWU program for entrepreneurs is really about taking time to actually work on your business and think about your business from a 30,000-foot view. So if you can actually help your customers do that, you don't even have to sell because you are problem solving. And and that is gold because we all need that, right? We all feel like, gosh, we don't know what to do. We're feeling alone. We're feeling, we don't have all the answers. And it's scary to have that pressure to have all the answers. So if you can put yourself in their shoes as well, I mean, that's really what makes the gold. So when we talk about service problems and root problems, I mean, these are just some kind of silly examples, but just getting like digging more, really understanding more about not only your business, right? Because if you're going to sell somebody, if you're going and talking to somebody about some kind of a transaction, you better know your own, you understand your business too. Understand and you have this gift as the founder to be able to tell your founder story, to tell your why about why you started. Like what upset you or ticked you off so much that you're like, dang it, I'm solving this problem. Like we need to have something. I will tell you mine. I mean, I got so upset when I looked around in every place I looked in Austin. This is in 2002. Gosh, I'm going way back. This is in, well, really like 2001. And I'm looking around and it's just men, 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 men. It was the first tech boom that was happening here in Austin. You couldn't read a story about a woman in any kind of media anywhere. I mean, it's like they didn't exist. And I had just moved here and I was like, what is the deal? Where are the women? This is an educated town. What is happening? And it really pissed me off. I was like, So that's the problem I was solving. I was like, dang it, women deserve to have a spotlight shined on them. Women deserve to have their stories told. And then I looked at the need. Women need to hear those stories. We need to be able to see it to be it. And that's what I was solving for. So when I'm talking to a customer about why I did what I did and why I built this and why I built a media company and why I'm doing these big events like our Women's Way Awards, which is coming up, and when I want them to sponsor it, it's about this recognition. It's about showing up. And the reason why I have 500, senior level and C-suite women showing up at this awards event is because I am shining that spotlight. And those are the people that you want as your customers. And they're really hard to get to. So you see how we're like looking at, how like just me understanding my why and be able to talk about my why. It's a little bit different. I'm sharing my story. I'm sharing, why am I doing what I'm doing? Like I'm not just doing this to make money. I mean, sure, we need to make money, but that's not what I'm doing this. And you're getting somebody also to buy into your dream. And then really understanding, just continuing to ask questions about what and really figuring out the root problem that they're trying to solve. How do they get in front of a certain type of person or how, whatever it is in your business and just digging and asking those questions. Questions are gold. Okay. So this kind of just gives you a little bit of an idea, like how you sort of diagnose, because I mean, when you're talking to somebody, they might be like, oh, well, I need more sales. But really that's not, I mean, that's just a symptom of what's happening. So you want to really try to get to, again, getting down to the root of the problem. And the root of the problem when, anybody's selling, right, is that, people are afraid of rejection. So, as a founder going out to sell, I mean, you understand, okay, yes, we all are afraid. Like we get rejected a lot as founders. We know that. And that's a really, really tough thing. But having to, you know, just sort of acknowledge like that's what I'm afraid of. And at the end of the day, what you need to do is use this as a learning. Use any kind of interaction you have, any kind of sales interaction as you're learning as much about their business and understanding about their problem. And when they don't buy from you, it's actually a better learning opportunity than even when they buy for you. I mean, if you just look at any kind of interaction, whether you get the sale or not. So get rid of the fear of rejection. We all hate it. Nobody likes to be rejected. We all want everybody to say yes. But when they say no, it's such a great opportunity. And it's an opportunity also to build a relationship with that person because so many times people will just ghost you and they won't get back to you because they don't really know how to say no. People don't, I mean, how many of you like to, tell people no? It's hard, right? Just the telling somebody else no is difficult, especially when you like the person. And I think that if you build a relationship with a person such that they actually not only will be okay with telling you no, right? I mean, that's okay. If they need to tell you no, you want them to actually tell you rather than just leave you hanging out there. But more so, if you have that relationship, you're going to be able to understand why they told you no. And that will help you. I mean, you may get some ahas about your business that you never would have if you didn't have that relationship and didn't get that information. And sometimes you'll get a piece of information and you're like, oh my gosh, they completely misunderstood what we do. Right? I mean, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't understand what I was asking them for. They're saying no, and you can turn it around. I mean, it's amazing what happens. Communication is hard these days, especially when we're not one-on-one. There's so much that gets lost in email or text or, gosh, I feel like people are having lengthy conversations with me on LinkedIn and I'm not there all the time. So sometimes 2 days will go by and I'm like, oh, wait, I didn't look, I'm trying to do my email and everything. So, there's a lot of gaps in there. So just understand that a lot gets lost in translation. So the more questions you can ask, just the more that you can, engage with that person, the better. And when you're actually with your customer, um, and just some ideas about, when they are going through this, um, going through their challenges and what they need, asking those leading questions, like if you need more sale, like what does that look like? What are your, how many more customers do you need from this? Or how, what's the dollar amount that you're attributing, to this sale? Like what do you need to be able to make your numbers? What kinds of things have you done in the past that have helped fill your pipeline? What's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? I mean, I'm always asking, and this is sort of in the advertising and sponsorship marketing framework, but I'm always asking, what have you done in the past? What ad have you ran that you were just like, oh my gosh, the phone started ringing off the hook, or what social media post have you done? What did it say? What were you promoting? Where did you run that? Who were you targeting? Just really understanding, from there, what works. So just ask a lot of questions. Also figuring out who is their, like, who are they really going at, trying to figure out, trying to reach, who is their consumer, what do they, what's their persona, of the person that they're trying to reach. Um, and that's often helpful because if that's the person that I mean, if that's, and again, I'm sort of using the example of me because I'm actually bringing humans. I mean, I know you guys have a lot of different businesses, but whatever that is, trying to connect those dots with somebody and saying, kind of, you told me that you're looking for this, this, and this. Here's how I can connect those dots for you. Okay, so let's talk about relationships, a little bit more and some other things that you can do. We've talked about the problem solving, and that's obviously in any kind of sales, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to help somebody solve a problem because if they don't have a problem that your service or your business solves, then you probably aren't going to get the sale, unless it's just, unless it's like jewelry or clothing and they just, they can't help it. They can't help but buy it. But some other things that you can do to really deposit in the relationship, bank account, genuinely listening. I know that sounds trite. It sounds like, but nobody listens. I mean, I actually am the person with like I'm the least ADD person in the world, or I used to be. We all are now. Like we're trying to do so many things. I mean, I never was like that. I always could focus on other people. And I find myself, I mean, I find my son is like, Mom, stop, look at me. Look at me when you're, because I'm trying to do so many things coming at me. So again, you want to stand out? Actually really listen to somebody. And when I say really listen, I mean you really do have to listen because you'll hear stuff. People will tell you because stuff that you're like, wow, and it may not have anything to do with the business at hand, but they're giving you a little bit of insight into them. And it's something, that you can use to help build that relationship, to let them know that you actually care about them and you care about their business and you're thinking about their business. Um, Sharing useful content and resources. I am notorious for, always, I mean, this is back in the day, I used to clip the articles. Oh, I used to clip out of the Wall Street Journal, swear, and mail it to people all the time, an article that I thought would be helpful or interesting. And I got more reactions, and I still, even now, when I send something like, "Hey, I thought this was really relevant to you, and here's why." I don't just send them an article saying, "Thought you'd like this." I say, hey, I saw this really interesting article, and last time I was on the phone with you, you told me A, B, and C. And this really spoke to that, thought it might be helpful. 100% of the time, I get a response. 100% people say to me, oh my gosh, thank you so much for thinking of me. I have never not had anybody just not say anything. And it's because, and that's so unusual in this day because I get ghosted a lot. Never on that because they're like, oh my gosh, somebody sees me. Somebody actually listened. Somebody cares about you. You just don't know how rare that is. So just being that person, and again, women are masterful at this. It- this is, and it's fun, right? This is what we want. It actually makes life fun. Like if we don't have this, like what's the point really? So this is really where it starts to get, like this is where I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe sales is kind of fun because this is all part of it, right? Celebrating their wins, knowing what's going on. I've got a client and her son is super into baseball and he's in all these leagues. I mean, I'm always asking her about what's going on with that because I do care. I care what happens and I know that that is so important to her. And she's always like, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much for asking." And it's not just this surface, "Oh, how are you?" Well, everybody asks that. Everybody's like, "Fine." But what are those don't ask somebody how they are. Ask them about something specific in your life, like that in their life, that shows them that you care and celebrate their wins. When something good happens, send them something. Just send them a note. It doesn't have to be a big deal. But I'm going to pop back up here to the second one, which I skipped over. I don't know how many of you noticed, so I skipped over making introduction, but I want to focus on this one because this is this piece about sharing your network. And I will tell you that this one thing is the highest level of currency that you can have. Making a meaningful introduction between two people is so incredibly powerful. And first of all, if you're doing it among women, which I'm always promoting, share your networks, make introductions. It's that mindset of abundance. But the person making the introductions and the person that's managing those relationships comes out on top. Like you now look like okay, you're the person who is in the middle of it all. Oh my gosh, Melinda made this really great
Right.
introduction for me and it led to this other sale. It's amazing what happens. And we all can do it. We just forget, but that's super, super important. So we're gonna, hone in a little bit more on those relationships, but that is really, really critical. You should be trying to make an introduction between somebody, another woman, a friend, another female business owner. I say at least make one or two a week. And, sometimes it takes a little work. Like, who can I do this for? But do it. It will become this great habit. And then you will be known as the great connector. And the connector always comes out on top. It's just how it is. And it's also the person when you're in a sales situation who will make the sale, right? Because you've already deposited so much into that relationship bank account that it makes everything else go so much more smoothly. Okay. So this is just a little bit of a recap. I mean, how you can, I know that people are using social media a lot. I just wanted to highlight, if you end up that tagging people in your social media posts, making sure that you're kind of showing up as an expert in whatever your field is, because I also think when you get people that are following you and that sort of they have that sort of, you know, um, even if they don't know you, they sort of have a warm introduction because they know a little bit about you from being online. Those things are important. Checking in with people when you're not trying to sell them something. And again, some of those things I mentioned, sending people an article, sharing something funny with them, whatever that may be, are all really good ways to do that. Anyway, so those are just some other way. So I wanted to kind of, I mean, this is where I was going to have a little bit of group interaction, but we can leave it to the end. But I want you guys to think about this when you're doing when we're doing the Q&A, is I want you guys to tell me how you leverage your networks. So I want you to give an example of, here's a time when I made this really meaningful connection and this is what happened, or this is how I am showing up and I'm building a network and I'm bringing people together, or I'm helping, and how it's helped expand my business because other people have then begun to make interest. So I really want to kind of you guys to share some things about, because you all have examples that are so meaningful. I only have example from what I've been doing, but I think, those examples. So I want you to think about those, and I hope somebody will get some good examples there. Okay. Uh, whenever I did sales trainings, you go outside and all the script work and everything. And I don't, a lot of people ask me about that. Should I do a script? Should I have a script for my people? And here's the thing. Yes, I think it's actually good to do when you're training salespeople, when you have salespeople coming on. I think them going on sales calls with you. So if it's not you doing it, letting them hear, how you talk about your brand, your product, your service, whatever that may be. Certainly, in this day and age, um, really crafting meaningful emails, that aren't just sort of your standard fare. I mean, oftentimes I'll put funny stuff in like um, the what's that thing called? The the subject line. Like, what is it called? Subject line. It's too early. Just to get, that's actually something that I might know about them or their business or something, that's a little bit different to get them to open it. But, I just think that, um, you can have some things like that. However, at the end of the day, really understanding what the problem is that you're trying to solve. So you have to understand on both sides. And this is where I think people miss. And they miss on both sides. So sometimes like you have to understand what problem you are really solving. Like what problem is it that you're solving, and who is your target market? Who is your super consumer? So that's one of the first things when you're looking at trying to figure out, okay, who am I going to go after to build my business, to grow my sales? We often end up going like, and we go after everybody because we don't really know, and we don't take the time to narrow and really understand who is that person who every time they use my product or service, it's a bullseye. It works every time. And describe them. Get really clear. Who are those people? What do they look like? How old are they? What's their level of education? Do they have kids? Do they have, just the persona, right? It doesn't have to be exact, but really understanding who your customer is. Because what happens is a lot of times we get rejected in sales because we're going after the completely wrong people and we really don't understand. So, I mean, you kind of, as a founder, you really have to be able to understand that. And your salespeople, if you have them at some point, they need to be able to understand that as well. Knowing who you serve, knowing the problem that you solve, knowing what's your unique value, why you over your competitors, especially if the person, that you are trying to sell to is using one of your competitors. How do you differentiate yourself? What is your unique proposition? And then outcomes. Do you know these outcomes from your customer? Can you give people examples of like, hey, there's a company that is very similar to yours, and this is how this whole thing played out. So, being able to give those examples, I think, is really, really important. So not only do you have to know, understand, you got to understand your own company. And I know that sort of sounds like, I mean, you're probably going, duh, why is she telling us this? Of course, we know our own companies. You would be surprised. And that's not a criticism, guys. It's that a lot of times our companies could do so many different things. And how many of you out there have 20 people coming at you with like, oh, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And it's all in different target markets and different, and you're all over the place. This is very common, especially when you're in that startup phase. So, and that can be really challenging because you go out there and you're not really sure and you're sort of doing this like spray approach, right? Instead of like this really honed and specific approach, and you get rejected a lot. And then we're back to the beginning where we're like, well, sales sucks. I don't want to do that because I'm rejected all the time and I'm losing my confidence and so this is the challenge. So the first thing you have to do is really understand and be super specific and really understand your business, the problem you're solving, and who your customer is. And it's not as easy as you think. I mean, you got to really, really dig on that. And when you're getting feedback from the people that are telling you no, you're refining that. You're taking that back and you're thinking about, okay, if they told me no, but I was so convinced that this person is my exact customer, let me take that data point. You're using that and it just helps you build. And so then what happens down the road is then you're going after because you are really understanding the problem you solve and who you solve it for. So you get real specific about where you're spending your time, where your salespeople are spending your time, and you gain that confidence. And you're back to really solving problems for people. So you really got to understand both sides. I hope that kind of makes sense. You got understanding your own business, but then you got to get in and understand their business, and then you connect the dots. That's your job as the founder. Okay. I am all about asking a lot of questions. Um, so I'll just emphasize that is that you people love to talk about themselves and they love to talk about their business. And let's get back to, we live in a world where, it's sometimes hard to do a deep dive with somebody. So the more that you can do that, the more that you can ask questions. And look, this is not just for sales. This is also when you're out and you're building your networks and you're out at events, you know, come with this open mind. Like, I want to actually know something about someone, not just their name and what their business is. Like, I really want to know what other things do I want to know about them and just dig beneath the surface. So, and you'll get more and more skilled at that. And you know what? It's also okay sometimes to talk about things that may be a little uncomfortable, right? I mean, everybody's afraid to talk about money still in this day and age. So sometimes, I'll be hemming and hawing around. I mean, I actually had this happen to me yesterday on a call. And this person we've been working with, we've been trying to get them to buy sponsorship and they've been trying to figure out their budget, waiting on their budget, all the things. And she called like in the other, we keep having these meetings. I think she's lovely and we have a great relationship. And I think she's feeling like, okay, I want to keep having these meetings with Melanie because I don't want her to think I'm blowing her off, but I don't really have, and I could tell, and I was like, okay, you're acting awkward today. Like, what? She's like, well, but I go, I know that you were waiting on your budget. She goes, yeah, well, I got my budget, and I said, okay, well, what are you thinking? Like, what's the number? She was like, well, and she kept dancing around it. So finally, I just start throwing out numbers. I was like, okay, well, do you think you could spend 5,000? And she's like, I could just, I'm just reading her body language. She's like, and I go, I said, okay, like 3,500. And she's like, yeah, I mean, I think, and I was like, all right, let's look at these levels. Like we were going through, and I literally had to pull it out of her, but we finally got to it. And she's like, oh, she was so relieved because I had been talking to her about a $10,000 sponsorship. And so she was embarrassed because, it's been all this time. And so, everybody's going through, but I could see that. And I have I like, oh, hey, look, we've got sponsors at every level. It's totally fine. This is going to be great. And then we started talking and, talking about what she could do, at the level, what she could afford and and we're good to go. But again, I was reading the room, I was listening to her, and I often a lot of times sales reps will come back not first thing I ask them is, so what, how much money they have to spend? And they look at me like, you know, uh, I don't know. And, and at the end of the day, if you're going to transact something, I think that, there needs to be that exchange. So don't be afraid to talk about money. Um, okay. So next one, just we're going to just recap. I'm getting close to, I think I'm getting close to time, and then I'm going to stop sharing so that we can, have a little bit more conversation. So this is really just recap. I don't need to read it to you. Y'all can read. So what I want you to also think about, in addition to, I'd love some examples from you guys when we go into the Q&A. I also want you to think about like what's one shift that you're going to try this week? What's something that resonated today that you're like, okay, I'm going to try that. And I'd love for you guys to share that, in addition to any other questions you have. Okay.
Thank you, Melinda.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you because like my screen was like, I was literally talking to like a big
Wow.
screen of my slides,
Thank
like trying to
you.
interact with you. That was bizarre. How did I do? Did it look like I was looking?
Great.
You got
Great.
lots of thumbs up and lots of hearts and
So Kimberly, do we have any questions online?
uh let's see. No, but there was lots of conversations going, so it was hard to sift. If any of you put a question in there that I didn't catch, but I was watching it very, very closely. There was just a lot of aha moments.
Okay, well, let's see if we have one here in person. Yes.
I would love to hear her speak a little bit more to, oh, I'm sorry, thank you. That was really, really amazing. Thank you so much for bringing all that good stuff to us. I would love to hear you speak a little bit more about the money conversation and bringing that budget. Like that is such a hard thing as a photographer who's wanting to do event photography and headshot events. They have a budget and they're reluctant to say anything about it. And I don't want to underbid myself. And I don't want to bid outside of their budget. So how do you address that?
Yeah. Um, well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge talking about money is never easy for anybody. And it's as uncomfortable for you as it is for the person on the other side. So I think that, again, that's where that relationship really comes in, where you can have those conversations. So in your specific example, though, I think that the first thing I always tell the entrepreneurs that I'm working with is you got to understand first how are you going to value your product? I mean, what does it really cost you to do this? And for you as a photographer, your time, you're looking at, you really understand what your pricing is. Because here's the thing, I know, so I find so many people, it's like I ask them that question and it's so fluid. They don't really know their pricing or they're afraid to say because you feel like, oh gosh, just what you said, like I might scare them away. Or, what if they don't have that budget, then I'm going to lose the business. And I think that at the end of the day, if you don't start with some like a really deep understanding of like, hey, I can't do this unless I make this, then like what is out there in the market? So what will the market bear? What are my competitors doing? Because that's relevant, right? But and I think that probably for you, it challenges, it's all over the map. Some people are doing it for free. Some people are doing it for $50 or for credit. Some people are doing it, for $2,500. I know that in that particular, it really runs the gamut. So that can be really challenging, but you have to sort of establish what is your market. I mean, I know somebody who she charges $2,500 for headshots and she gets it and she is established and that is her market and this is and the way she's marketed. But I also know another person who charges $50 for headshots. So what is that? So I think that that's really, I mean, that's a big part of it is got to come from you first, like you sort of know and you're okay with it. And then you can make a decision. There's sometimes when you say, you know what? I'm going to make a choice. I'm going to do this for a reduced fee or whatever because of XYZ. You know, I'm getting something else, or I know the exact right people are going to be in the room and I'm going to gain more. I mean, you can sort of make those decisions. But I think that if you start with like, what's their budget and you're not thinking, then I can't tell you how many people get in and then you're like, why did I even take this job? And it ends up being worse for you. So if you don't know that, you know, you really, and I think that will also help you go in when you go in and ask about their budget, then you'll know because you know what your thresholds are as well. So I don't know if that helps sort of
Thanks,
frame it a little bit.
Melinda. I think that we have time for one more question. We have 1 minute. So Kimberly, question online. I'm going to pass it to you.
Let's see here. Nope, just lots of affirmation. A lot of affirmation.
Yeah, well, and I do think that it's very difficult. Somebody wrote in here about just being able to talk about your own business. And that's what I think practicing. You know, I run one of the TWU cohorts and just practicing your pitch and really making it authentic and natural so that you're super comfortable because getting comfortable talking about your own business and what that value is the crucial first step, right? You got to know what problem you are solving and who exactly you're solving it for at a very deep level before you can sell anything to anybody.
Well, thank you, Melinda. We are out of time, but I know there's questions. Melinda was gracious enough to put her information at the very end of the last slide. Please feel free to reach out to her. She is phenomenal in responding and the feedback she'll give you. She is truly a living example of what she just shared with you this morning. She is about relationship building and connecting one another with others as well as with her. So thank you so much for all that great insight, Melinda. We so appreciate it. And we so appreciate the audience online. I am going to log us off, but please remember, Kimberly will continue with after presentation networking and have you guys fill out a poll for us on the event this morning. Thank you. And online audience, have a great rest of your day. Thank you, Melinda, again.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks guys. Great seeing you.
Thank you, Melinda. Sorry, I'm trying to keep up with the chat and Kian, are you still on? Kian Brady?
Yes, Keon. Yeah, I'm still here.
Kian, um, I didn't get your question, so I've copied it and I'm going to send it to Melinda.
Okay.
And just to make things easier, are you comfortable putting your email in the chat?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Because I will be talking to Melinda later today. So I am pasting your question into my notes to her, and then I'll make sure that she reaches out to you.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Okay, so we're going to have I'm going to stop recording.